Hello and welcome to this episode of Tarot Rebel Podcast, episode number 5. This episode is brought to you by Gogo.
And Chas. Disclaimer, we are not responsible for awakening the masses.
That was good. We did well. We did well. Hello, everybody. We are back for another week.
Yeah, we're back at it.
I don't know what that voice was. I feel like some sort of like grammar. Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Welcome to my cottage. I'm going to hex you.
Uh-oh.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So today we have spoken about discussing tarot decks, acquiring tarot decks, buying tarot decks, new tarot decks, used tarot decks, second-hand tarot decks, and so on and so forth. So opening the topic today, we have what do we have written down? Okay, your first deck. So Chas, what was the first
Yes.
deck you ever got? Tell us a little bit about it. And at
My,
what age?
okay,
Because that's important.
yes, I was 17,
Mm-hmm.
and my first deck was the Rider-Waite, actually. It was the regular schmegular Rider-Waite deck. And back then, there wasn't a big variety like there is today. So I think around my time, there was pretty much maybe a handful, if maybe a couple. Like I know around my time, either people had the Rider-Waite or they had the whatchamacallit. I can't remember it offhand.
Mystic
It's
Tarot?
no, not the Mystic. It was
Mr. Crowley? Thoth?
yes, the
Thoth.
Toph deck, right?
Yeah.
So back then, it was either the Rider-Waite you had or the Toph deck.
Yeah.
Those were pretty much the ones that were in circulation.
Yeah.
And
Well, right away it was solid. Is solid
yeah,
always. I think that's it's always evergreen, I would say. It will never go out of fashion.
exactly. And I've had a couple of students in my classes tell me that they don't like the Rider-Waite or they don't connect with it, and I
It's
guess it varies for everyone.
yeah, yeah.
And I
I
think,
think it's also dependent on the time that we live in, where I feel
right,
like probably when was it created? 1909. That's
yeah,
what well a bit 100
like
years
a
ago.
century
I feel
ago.
like art wasn't probably the art scene and getting art into your house wasn't as um what's the word that I'm looking for? You couldn't do it as easily as you can do it now, and you wouldn't have such a wide variety of art. So now with today's age where you have thousands of decks out there, all
Mhm.
different types of and styles of art, that there is one that's certainly going to get your brain going and get your intuition going and stuff like that. So understand that, because I feel like we are also now more visually stimulated at this age, or at least more aware of it than we would have been in the past. So I understand that as well, that aspect.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. The students that I had or the other friends that I've had, that are also fellow readers that didn't connect is because of, the artwork, and it's not very contemporary symbolism. So it's like, yeah, it's really hard to connect with
Yeah,
artwork from over a century ago.
that's true. That's true.
So, but for me, like I said, this was quite some time ago. So I was excited and intrigued by the artwork because it is very old. And, the outfits and the scenery, is very much, it's very European, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
because of course
Yeah.
Arthur Waite was from England. So it has a very kind of UK-ish kind of European type like you look at the artwork and you look at the scenery, it's very much like a European countryside, a lot
Yeah,
of the
pretty
scenery.
much. Pretty much,
So
yeah.
yeah, so for me it was an appeal because
Hmm.
I love Europe. I love all things European. So
Of
for
course.
me, I connected with it almost immediately. So,
Yeah,
but again, to each his own. Not everyone will.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
and I think I did mention this earlier on in the podcast that we've done, that it is a good stepping off point. It is a good reference deck to
Yeah,
have. Even
it
if
is.
you don't connect to it, it's good to have because it's the original deck and it has the original symbolism, and you can go off of that into your more contemporary decks.
Yeah. And when you look at
So
the majority of the books written on tarot that do not come in correlation to a specific deck or in companionship with a specific deck or a specific style of art produced for that deck, the generalized books will usually refer to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck if they are of the RWS system. So that artwork and that representation and depictions of the cards are usually what you will see in books, at least in those that are kind of a generalized formats. So
exactly.
it is useful in that aspect, at least to kind of have, if you don't use it, to have it for some sort of reference, pardon me, my English today, for some sort of reference at least. And I think the good thing is that today you can get it online as well. Get at least the images so you can look at them on
Get
your
an app.
phone and your laptop. Yeah, get an app basically.
There's an actual app now, a
Yeah.
Rider-Waite
Oh yeah.
app. So there's no excuse. And
Oh,
that's what
there is a lot. I know that Blue Angel has their decks on apps as well, which is fascinating. But I
ooh,
wouldn't. I like the feel of paper too much. Yeah.
yeah. To
Hmm.
me that takes away from it. Like
Yeah.
personally, and like I said, I'm glad you pointed that out because that was the point that I was going to make is get the deck. Uh, don't get the app. Get the deck because, like again, if you don't connect with the Rider-Waite, the Arthur Waite deck, um, just to make the comparison with the original artwork with the contemporary, because it's good to make that comparison. You can see where the artwork has evolved over time through different artists and interpretations from the original. Like think
Exactly.
about it. Just like with any artwork, you know what I'm saying? Like if you look at the Mona Lisa, the Mona Lisa is a classic. You'll see different variations in other places, but nothing beats the original because you could take from the original into the newer versions. You know what I mean? So there you have to have somewhat of an appreciation for it, at least a respect, because it is the original deck. It's the original artwork. So I always feel like I always kind of emphasize on that in my classes that there is an importance to obtaining and having that in your collection, definitely as a reference above all. So that was my first deck, and I had it I still have it. I literally right now have it on my desk. This
Nice.
is, I'm gonna say it, and gonna reveal my age, but this is a 21-year-old deck. Like, yeah, about. So,
Pretty young.
yeah.
Just legal.
I'm gonna admit my age, but yeah, it's a 20+ year old deck there, and I still have it, and it's still well kept.
Yeah.
Because I think that's another thing we're covering today.
Yeah, we
Maintenance.
will later. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have that
because
point as well in here
I'm big on
written
that.
down. Because today we came prepared. Usually we just go hands in, whatever happens, but today we have notes. So
Yeah, we usually go off the dome here, but
yeah,
we're
which
prepared.
turns out pretty good because we can chat. Oh, we can yap. So today I think a little bit of organization. Let's see how that works.
That's Virgo, because it's Virgo season, and now
Oh yeah.
everything has to be in order and methodical, and
Yeah, that's why I suggested that we write down things because it's like, yeah, it's my moon. So, as you said,
That's
you
so
reminded me of that. So,
Virgo.
so that makes sense now. Why I wanted specifically today to write down points that I wanted to bring up in the
Yeah.
podcast. So, quite
And today
interesting.
is, in fact, the new moon in Virgo. So
Virgo,
yeah,
yeah,
very
makes sense.
Virgoian.
Makes sense. I don't have much work today, but I am doing shit, which is amazing. I
Yeah.
am succeeding
Regardless,
at life for a day at
it's a
least.
productive day. Like, if you're not productive on a double Virgo day, because this is a double Virgo day, sun and moon in Virgo,
Hmm.
something's very wrong if you're not, like, not productive in any way. I don't know.
Yeah,
So.
that's good.
All right, so what's next on the topic list there, sir?
Well, we got to do as well. I was just wanting to say quickly.
Okay, well, what was your
My
first act? Yeah, what
I
was
was
your
just
first?
gonna get into it.
I'm like, wait a minute, we didn't get into you and your
Yeah,
first act. So yeah, let's talk
yeah.
about that.
My first deck as well was to ride Wade Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was actually was looking at different decks. Like one of the first decks that I ever saw, like that I was interested in because you get to see decks on TV, on psychic shows and stuff like that. But I was like, it wasn't something that interested me before. But when I started looking at decks, I know that the first deck that caught my eye was the Terra Vampires by Ian Daniels. And I didn't get that deck till like 3 years into me actually studying and reading tarot. So the first deck that I got was Rider Waite Smith, and that was about 7, I think, or 8 years ago, even. I think even 8 years at this point. It would be about 8 years around this, because I think it was in August that I got it. And if it was 24, no, what year was it? Damn it. Yeah, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago. So the deck is still with me, but unfortunately, last year I had lost a King of Wands from the deck. I was doing
Oh,
readings and I was doing it at a coffee shop. I was reading for a client and I came home and I was going through the cards to just cleanse them since they were around people, a larger amount of people and out in a different space. I went through the cards and I tend to kind of go through the cards and count them just to make sure if I've lost anything. And good thing I did because the King of Wands was missing. So I'm at a loss with the King of Wands, but the deck is still with me. I'm still keeping it because it's my original, and now I got a second copy that I'm using on a regular basis because I don't imagine I would ever be able to live without a Rider-Waite Smith deck. Because for me, in my practice, I do have a plethora of different decks. But at this point, whenever I feel overwhelmed, because there are certain decks that have a lot of detail and that have a certain type of energy, and after a while, you just need something simple, something plain that's like, okay, I'm familiar with this. I don't need to use all of my energy in order to interpret, but it's just kind of, it comes smoothly. So whenever that happens, I just run to the Rider-Waite Smith because it's like everything is in here already in my head, so I can just go into it, easy peasy lemon squeezy, no problem. So Rider-Waite Smith was the first one for me as well. But yeah, it's still with me, but one card is missing. So yeah, but it's still well kept. The edges were a little bit darker, as it so happens. So, but beyond that, it's yeah, it's the
mine is a
most
little
beloved deck.
battered. I still have
Yeah,
all the
mine too.
cards. Um,
Thankfully.
three. Well, you guys that are listening can't see, but I could show G right now because
Yeah.
we can see each other.
Yes.
My three of cups is like all bended and kind of, I don't know,
Oh
like
yeah,
muted over
got those
here.
as well.
Yeah.
Got those as well. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little like you can see like the ink on it and the cardstock is real weathered.
Yeah.
So you can see this can tell you the age of the deck, this particular card, but
Hmm.
most of the cards are in pretty good condition. But
Yeah.
isn't it heartbreaking when you lose a card?
Hmm.
Oh my
Oh yeah.
gosh, like for me,
Oh my God, I lost Tara Barbieri. Usually I took it with me to have it in the car, actually.
Mhm.
So if I do readings for people or friends, and they're like, "Bring your cards with yourself, so we can do readings and stuff like that." So okay, and I tend to forget to take the cards when I leave the house because I'm usually in a hurry. So I put the Barbieri Tarot in my car, and then I was doing a reading for a friend of mine in the car. And the next time I went to look at the deck, I was like, okay, it feels like certain images are missing. So I noticed that they have fallen like in between the stick shift and the seat. So I was like, okay, I needed to fish them out. Like I was literally fishing for cards, making sure they do not get bent, damaged, or in any sort of way battered. So now that was a fun experience. Not so fun in the moment because I was like, bitch, no.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you something.
Yes,
Okay, from your first deck, right? At some
yes.
point, did you develop like an addiction to collecting cards? Like, were you like a card collector addict?
Hmm. Why you be calling me out, Linda? Why you
I
be
mean,
calling me out?
I know
Don't
I
do
would.
that. Don't do that. I mean, you know, I's a collector. Like Linda, look at me. Like I have everything. Like I have about 30 to 35 decks at this point. So that's just
I
a
have
couple of
about the same.
years. Yeah, it's just a couple of days. Yeah, a couple of years into collecting and stuff like that. The first 3 years, I was oh my god, it was too much. Like every two
Yeah,
months, I would order two decks. Like
yeah.
I know that there was a year where I ordered just one deck. Last year, I ordered Halloween Tarot, Autumn Tarot, Goddesses and Sirens Oracle, Gods and Titans Oracle, and that was that. And this
Okay.
year I got the Mary L. I got the Nightmare Before Christmas, which is still supposed to come,
I'm
and then
waiting for
the
mine. It's
Mystic Menagerie
delayed.
Tarot, and that's that.
I was
So
supposed to get it. I was supposed to get it on Tuesday, and I was so
yeah,
excited. I'm telling you,
two.
I was like obsessively opening the door every 5 minutes to see if it was in front of my door.
Me too. And I saw people in Facebook groups posting. I saw at least two people posting about the deck, and I saw the images, and I was like, "Oh my fucking god! Just shoot me right now, because I want that
I
deck." I know there are bigger problems in the world, but I need my cards.
I know I was like I really thought I was gonna get it today, and I mean on Tuesday, and they I got a message from Amazon. I guess because it's in such popular demand
Mm-hmm.
in my particular area. It's popular demand because the warehouse in my area literally ran out of it. So they're not going to have any more in stock till next month. So I'm not getting my deck till the ending of October. And they were like, do you want to cancel or do you want to wait it out? And I said, I'm waiting it out because
Yeah.
who's to say it won't, you know, run out of stock
I mean, to
again?
stock. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't want to risk it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to wait it out. I'm disappointed, but hopefully I get it before Halloween.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm
It
hoping
would be in
for.
order. It would be in order to come
But
before
yeah, I would
Halloween.
say the first couple of years too, I was a serious addict, and back then, we didn't have Amazon, we didn't have none of these online sites, so getting a new deck was a pilgrimage. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would go either to a bookstore, a well-known bookstore and chain out here, Barnes and Nobles. Barnes and Nobles was usually my go-to place to get my decks. And there was two metaphysical shops in Manhattan that I used to go to
Mm-hmm.
also to get them. One in particular in Manhattan was called Enchantments, and I used to go
Mm-hmm.
and get decks there. So it was always Barnes and Noble's Enchantments that I would go to, and then they opened up a Borders bookstore close to my house, and that's where all most of my decks came in from Borders, and yeah, and then actually as time went on, I started, this is when social media kind of blew up years later. I came across other readers, and some of them would just give me decks that they like didn't want.
Yeah.
you know and I think that's what we're going to cover next, right? Like, is
Yeah,
it
we can go into that to see. So, what's your perspective on like decks that have been used, secondhand stack, decks that have been given to you? How do you proceed with such a deck, or how would you connect to such a deck? What's like steps for you that you usually do when something like that is given to you?
me personally? I'm here for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for it. If you want to give me a deck, that's awesome. And interesting enough, years ago, when I was introduced to tarot, like I said, I was introduced through a friend of mine, who was she was Jewish, and her mother was into Kabbalah, and they also had like gypsy um, blood. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
um, she said traditionally, from a gypsy perspective, that decks are usually passed down, and they're usually given to you. Like your first deck, if you're a gypsy, your first deck is usually given to you by an elder, and that's like their tradition. So for me personally, if someone gives you a deck, it's like I kind of feel it's kind of keeping, true to that tradition. It's like an
Yeah,
endearment. It's a gift. Like, I'm all for it.
true.
Like, you want to give me a deck, I'm with it. And a lot of people have this assumption, like, oh, you're taking on another person's energy, and so on and so forth. And we were talking about this. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, you could clean your deck, guys. There's cleansing rituals you can do to cleanse your deck. So I do it quite often.
It's
So how
necessary.
do you clean your deck, G? How do you do your cleansings with it?
I've done many different things over the years. If I'm in a rush, which happens when I take times in a year where I will just do a huge like ritualistic cleanse, when I will take all of my decks, or at least like half of them, and then another half at a different point. I usually tend to create like elemental cleansings. I'll do like ritualistic elemental cleansing. I'll bring in like water, like seashells, salt, air, feathers, some sort of incense, and then doing fire with candles and earth, probably some crystals. And just, I usually tend to kind of lay all of that in a circle, sorry, and put the cards over. And I usually do like figurettes of infinity over the actual circle with
Oh,
individual cards or with the entire deck. I've done that. I've just set the crystals down, knock on them with the intention of like clearing, cleansing, set a
mhm.
crystal on top of them and left them like that for a little bit, for a day, a couple of hours to kind of a charge to clear and cleanse. Um, I did think for charging clear quartz is really good, and also depending on the deck, if it has a specific energy, it's really interesting to pick up different decks and use them with it as well. So there's that. Just regular incense, I've done that as well. I've also used sage in general to just smoke them out. Kissing them is actually really interesting as well. If you're getting a new deck, I usually do that as well, just kissing it um, and connecting to it that way for some reason. And I also like to like touch my third eye with it sometimes. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's just something that I've never kind of encountered that. So I probably exist somewhere out there and somebody has spoken about it before. But for me, it's kind of just instinctively what came through and what I tend to do with pretty much everything that's kind of spiritually in my life, whether that be jewelry, uh, whether that crystals, cards, whatever. So that's kind of my process usually. What about you? What do you do for clearing, cleansing, charging the cards?
I have similar methods. I use the crystals, definitely. Smudging with sage is good. I also use Palo Santo and other than
Mm-hmm.
sage. Um, Sometimes it's good to use also like candles too. Like I usually have like candles around also is good for cleansing and keeping the energy clear. Sometimes giving it a good knock just helps too.
Yeah,
Uh, or sometimes I shuffle for a while, like after a reading to kind of clear it out from the last
yeah,
read. That's kind of a quick cleansing that I do in between readings. Sometimes I'm shuffling there for a minute. Sometimes I'm shuffling. It's a brief shuffle. It just really, I guess it goes by my intuition, like just instinctively, whether I need to
yeah,
shuffle for a while to clear it out or like I said, a brief shuffle.
yeah.
So, um, yeah, but I have similar methods too. The kissing is actually interesting. I'm trying to think if I've done that before. I know I like to
It's just
smell
oh yeah, me too. I'm a
them.
sniffer. When it comes to cards, I'm like, ooh, smells nice.
I smell them when they're new. I know that's, it's like a thing,
You know what?
just like when you get a brand new book, you smell it. It's like
Yeah.
when you get a
Oh my
book, you
god.
smell it.
The best ever smelling cards, the first edition of Wild Unknown Tarot. Like
Oh,
that deck smells absolutely amazing. It's like cocaine. In the world of cards, this is like top notch. It's like cocaine. So, oh, I love it.
so how about you
This
though? How do you feel like about secondhand decks? Like,
me.
yeah.
I do have a couple. My Nicolata Ciccoli Tarot is secondhand. My Fallen Angels Oracle is secondhand and probably the most treasured deck out of my entire collection. But yeah, I've gotten gifted decks before, and I've bought secondhand decks as well. I just whenever I get it, I'll take the time first of all to clear it and cleanse it, and then I will start like going through the cards, looking at them, trying to connect to them, trying to find my meanings for them and stuff like that. Because that's what I usually do with the new deck. I'll just go through it right away because it hasn't been connected to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But with the used deck, I'll usually do that, just clearing, cleansing the methods that I described before, and then just going
Mm-hmm.
through it, connecting to it. I feel like there is nothing wrong with the second hand deck or deck that has been used because ultimately it's an image. It's an image printed on a piece of paper. And yes, energy gets imprinted into things, but as well with a good cleansing, clearing that can be sorted for stronger connections. I feel like cord cutting and stuff like that can be done as well if that's necessary. And I feel like that's more if the deck would have been used in magical purposes as well, there I think would be more of an issue clearing the deck where it would take more because you have a heavier amount of energy on the actual deck or in connection to the actual deck. But beyond that, if the deck is what I want and what I feel like I can work with, I don't care if it's brand new or been used for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same here. I gladly welcome them. I get excited. I've al- I also do swaps with friends. Like we trade. So
Hmm. Next on our list
yeah.
is swapping decks. You getting into it, trading tarot decks or oracle decks, Orville and Normand, Sybils, whatever,
Yeah.
cards in general.
I'm
Have you
still getting
traded before?
comfortable. I'm still, kind of working, learning actually Lenormand. I have one
Hmm.
Lenormand deck. Actually, no, do I? I have two. I have two of
Yeah,
them, and I'm still, I'm learning the combinations and the spread because I know they have the grand tableau,
yeah.
and
Oh, I've
I've
done that
tried the
one.
grand tableau. It's a lot. I'm like,
Oh shit. Sorry. It is. Rona over here. It is a
oh
lot.
no,
I've tried it
no
once.
Rona, Corona, no Rona.
It gets triggered. Um, yeah, I've tried the Grand Tableau. I do use Lenormand at times. I'm not like completely like I can do it all day, every day, But like if I need to do a reading for somebody, I can do it. I can jump into it. The Grand Tableau is a bit much, and I feel like that takes a lot of practice in order to interpret it completely. And I feel like you can do like probably a 10-hour long reading with that
Mhm.
36 cards and all the combinations that you get. But you know what I like to use it for, actually? If I get some clients that want a more generalized reading, or it's like, let's do my love life general, or health, or finances general, or completely general life reading. I like to pull that and I will do a 9 card spread with the
Mhm.
person as the significator in the middle and then the rest of the 8 cards around them. That one is
I do
actually
that
really fun.
too.
It's really good. I would
I
like
do
it for
that
the
too.
general because it gives you a good jumping off point, and then I like to add tarot cards in it and oracle cards and just woof, just combine it all. It's like a
That's
nice
exactly how
juicy,
I
oh
do
my
it.
god, oof, yeah.
And even like reading for myself sometimes, that's how I do it. I do 9 cards and the middle card being the significator and just kind of going off combos from the middle. That's what
Yeah,
I
which you don't do in
do.
tarot. Which you don't do in tarot. I don't use significators very interestingly, but that's a
Yeah.
topic for another discussion. So where were we? Swapping tarot, swapping
Yeah, we
cards.
started on swapping cards.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you feel about that?
I do it often. Actually, I
Can you
I
separate
swap.
from your decks? Is it not like emotionally painful? Because for me it is. I can't.
Um, well, actually, I swapping we're talking about, right? Oh, I thought we were talking about gifting. No.
No, no, no. Swapping, trading. Like if another person has a deck that you want and you have a deck that you don't use that much, and it's like
Oh yeah,
I
okay.
can give that for that sort of thing. Trading basically.
Trading, swapping. I'd swap readings,
Hmm.
not decks like that. I'm
You're
gonna
like
be honest.
not if I don't necessarily have to. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, because I all the decks that I have, I've chosen intricately. Like, there's a reason
Yeah.
why I chose them. So, like you said, parting with them is hard. But I
Yeah.
did make a trade once, and
One.
I was I honestly I was kind of manipulated into it, and um the person I realized later on was not a nice person, so I I regret it, but it is what it is. I remember she really wanted my sex magic tarot.
Mm,
Like, she was, every time I would use it, every time I would bring it, she was obsessed with it, and she was like, "Oh, I'll trade you. I know you like gypsy stuff, and I have a gypsy deck."
yeah.
So I was like, "Yay, okay." So um, it was not worth the trade at all. It was like kind of this cheapy, like fortune telling deck,
Oh,
and I got duped basically. And I think another factor about it was that was a birthday gift to myself, and I gave it away. And I
oh.
think after that, I
Did you
feel like
get another copy
yes,
at
I
least?
did. I did.
Oh,
I
thank God.
and yeah, I bought it again. I bought it again, and I think after that experience, it was a lesson for me to be very mindful of who I trade with, who I swap
Yeah.
with. Um, yeah. So, but yeah, that was one of the last times I think I did trade. It was a couple of years ago. We're talking like maybe 4 years ago. About
Hmm.
that's the last time I did a swap with somebody. But
Yeah,
I've
that was
tried.
pretty
I mean,
much around my time as well, because it's you usually get decks that you want, like unless you're an impulsive buyer, I guess.
but then I have some decks that I bought that I really didn't connect with, or they weren't what I thought, and I don't mind trading them. So I'll put
Yeah.
them out there in a group. I'll put them out there. Um, I I had actually, and I know some may not agree, but I had the Egyptian tarot, one of the Egyptian tarot decks. I think
Hmm.
it's the Lascarabo.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, the Egyptian Taro, and I really didn't connect with it, and I was really disappointed in the artwork. I thought it was very mediocre. I mean,
Is
I
that a
love
newer release?
um
Let me see.
it,
Is
I
it called
actually
Egyptian Tower specifically?
yeah, I believe it was. And I had the box set. I had like the full-on box set of it with the book and everything. And I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't really feeling the artwork. But I did get the Egyptian Oracle with it, and I really liked the Egyptian Oracle deck better than the
Is it
Taro
this
deck.
one?
Let me see. Yeah, yeah, that's it. I wasn't
That
crazy
one?
about it.
Hmm.
But that's
I
the
mean,
golden, that's the reflective version. I
okay.
had the basic matte, kind of, it wasn't like the pretty reflective one, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, it's traditional. Well, sort of like it looks like hieroglyphics and everything else in there. But I don't know as well. I don't know if I would be able to do reading with that one, like without
I
studying it
tried.
properly and taking a lot of time to invest into that.
And I think the card stock wasn't good, like the best either. And I'm surprised because I have a lot of Lascarabo decks. And,
Look,
I
I
haven't
must
had
say
one.
this. Uh, a lot of people are not happy with low Scarabeo decks, at least the quality of the decks, because it tends to be very slippery and very flimsy.
Hmm.
Like, I have a couple. I love the images, I love the decks, and everything else, but the card stock could be a little bit better. I feel like, in comparison to the US Games decks, especially these newer ones, I feel like it's thicker and it's different kind of a feel under the hands. So there is some differences in that respect. And I will honestly say that some of the older decks that I have tend to or have shown signs of aging pretty early on, which I was not the happiest about. So there's that. But again, topic for a different discussion. Swapping and
Yeah, because
trading.
I think that's a big factor for me, card stock. Also the size, sometimes certain decks that I got were a little too big or a little too small, and
Mm,
I didn't get the real feel. So everyone has their own unique, um, I guess, standards for what they look for in a deck.
yeah.
For me, card stock is always the first thing because you're going to be shuffling it, you're going to be using it often.
Yes.
I think the card stock to me that was the worst in a deck is the Game of Thrones Taro.
Really?
Oh, it's terrible. It's this weird sort of textured card stock. I guess they were trying to make it look a bit more um ancient, or
Hmm.
kind of give it that parchment type of feel.
Yeah.
But to me, honestly, it was an epic fail. I
Okay.
do not like the texture in the Game of Thrones deck. I have it there because it's a novelty. It's a it's a collector's item, especially now that the series is over.
Yeah.
So it is definitely for the fact to just have it as a in your collection is one thing, but like I very seldom use it because I'm not crazy about the card stock. It's just
Mm,
um yeah, I think it was really like a lot of times it's hit or miss with the card stock, and for the
that is
Game of
true.
Thrones deck, it was definitely, for me, it was a miss. I'm not feeling it at all. And
Yeah.
then there's some that are too glossy and they kind of just slip out of your hands.
Hmm.
Sometimes they get stuck together because they're too glossy, and like the laminate gets stuck on the
Yeah.
cards. Oh, the struggle.
That's because it's like I've worked in a printing store, in a printing office. So I got the view of how that is actually being done. And like the ones that have the plastic, because you literally have a layer of plastic over the actual image, which is how most of the decks were done before, especially the US games, which I think when I look at the decks, I have the Halloween tarot over here. Let me just check now. That's still, it feels sort of like plastic, but at the same time, this could be because you have a layer of spray that they also do. So with this one, I feel like there's plus and minuses to both sides. With the plastic, it usually tends to stick because when you handle it, your greasy, sweaty hands, whatever, it tends to create moisture, and then the plastic over time will just start to stick. With the one where they spray the actual images rather than put the plastic on, which is still a form of plastic layer on top of images, it tends to show signs of tear and wear prior or early on, where the plastic will sometimes start to rip off over time. This will start to just fade out. So if you're looking for more of that kind of a vintage style deck that's been used a lot, maybe the one that have the spray on them would look more nicer than actually getting a deck where the plastic is just standing off of the actual images, which doesn't look nice. Happened to my first deck and doesn't look nice.
Yeah.
So there's that.
I would say honestly, in my experience, the decks that have a bad reputation for that and have where the cards constantly get stuck together is Hay House. Hay
Really?
House, yeah, the Hay House decks that I have, almost all of them had that issue with them getting stuck together or being stuck together. And you have
I
to
see.
be very careful that, you don't peel it too hard because then it'll like mess up, the card. Both of them will get
Okay.
messed up that are stuck together. Sometimes I had one deck, it was a recent one that I got. I think it was the Talking to Heaven. It was a mediumship deck, and it was a beautiful deck, but the cards were all stuck together. And I think I
Really?
had like 5 cards at one point stuck together. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I got to be careful because I don't want to mess up the cards. So I kind of left them out overnight, I guess, to kind of air it out a bit. And then I was able to like separate them. But yeah, in my experience, the Hay House has had that issue.
Don't have any of their decks, so I can't
You
I
don't
can't
have
judge.
any. You're lucky. There's a few that I
No,
liked. I guess.
they don't create decks that really speak to me, honestly. None of the none of the decks that I've kind of came across from them are really up my alley.
Right.
So probably that's why. But
Yeah. The Moonology deck I got recently is actually really good. I think they're getting a bit more progressive because they were more kind of, kind of, I guess, more metaphysical, more about, the positivity of it all and,
yeah,
the lighter
affirmations,
side.
Doreen virtue side of things.
Right. And she's
Hmm.
out of the picture now. So,
Yeah.
because everyone knows the situation with that. She became born again and kind of stepped away from it
Yes.
all. Um, and I think that's how I was introduced to Hay House because I had a client that asked me if I knew about her, and I didn't. And I remember I looked her up and I saw that she had a bunch of decks, but Oracle, but she did
Yeah.
have the Angel Tarot, the Angel Tarot deck and the Archangel Tarot deck. I only have the Angel Tarot. I don't have the Archangel deck.
Yeah.
Now they're Radley Valentine. He has his name on all the decks now. But back then it was the Doreen Virtue, Angel Tarot, and the Archangel
Well,
Tarot.
she was head of the game, not just cards, but courses, certifications, everything. So that was a lot. That was a lot.
Yeah, and it was just honestly, but that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
It was just kind of odd the way she just stepped away the way she did, but it is what it is. But
Yeah.
um but yeah, like for me their decks um could use a little work with that. The gloss that they use, it kind of saturates the cards to the point where they
Yeah.
get stuck.
I
And it's
mean,
annoying. It's annoying as hell. Okay.
I get that, yeah. Especially when you're doing a reading and then you notice another card is behind that and you're like, fuck. Because
I think a
sometimes
lot of
that
their,
happens.
yeah. I'm sorry. What were you saying?
No, just I feel like that can mess up a reading ultimately because I know that happened to me and I was like, okay, I start to doubt, like, okay, maybe I was supposed to interpret that card and I didn't notice it beforehand. And, it just, your mind starts to go. But, like, that's why you try to take care of them as much as possible and just check. I feel like it's also an important thing
Right.
before doing anything and making sure how they behave and treating them in that way as well. What
Right.
did you want to say?
I think a lot of a lot of their decks kind of focus on metaphysical stuff like mediumship
Hmm.
and healing and things like that. Because I know
Yes.
Abraham Hicks has a few decks um, through Hay House as well.
Hmm.
Uh, I Colette Baron Reed I do like though.
Her
I
decks
like
are actually really interesting. Yeah.
yeah. I think out of all the Hay House decks that I've purchased, I I really like hers the most. I have the
But doesn't she have the enchanted map or
yes,
it's something like that? Enchanted something.
Enchanted Map, yeah, and she also has um Oracle, I forgot goodness.
She has a
Um
couple.
it's a red box and it's one of my favorites. How could I like totally forget it? I'm having a brain fart right now.
Uh, no, that's by Blue Angel. That's probably not her. Uh,
Yeah. I'm
Rebels
like
Oracle, Sacred Rebels Oracle. That's Blue
no,
Angel.
that's not her. Yeah, that's Blue Angel. That's not her. Yeah.
See.
But she has like really good decks though.
Hmm. Oh,
I'm
she
like, yeah.
has. Wow. Yeah, she has the Enchanted Map Oracle, Wisdom of the Hidden
Yes.
Realms,
Wisdom.
Wisdom of Avalon, Mystical Shaman Oracle, the Spirit Animal Oracle. This is Wisdom of the Oracle as well. That's the red box. That's the newer
Yes.
one. I,
Wis-
I know that I saw a review of those ones.
yeah. The Wisdom
Hmm.
of the Oracle. I love that deck. The artwork is so pretty and the interpretations are really interesting and personalized, I feel.
Yeah.
So
You know what
I
deck
actually
I'm craving for the longest time?
so, what was that?
The deck that I've been craving for the longest time right now
Hmm.
has been the Sacred Rebels Oracle. For some reason, I don't know. I've
Which
been
one?
itching for that deck. Sacred Rebels Oracle.
Oh my God, yes, me too. Me too. I've
It's an
had that
interesting deck.
on my on my like wish list forever.
Hmm.
I had a friend a couple of years ago who had it and she did a few like we used to do swaps
Yeah.
and she did a reading with the Sacred Rebel and I loved it. I loved the cards that she pulled and I remember I even wrote it down. I wrote down the name of the card and the terminology and I was just like I got to get this deck. I'm
Yeah.
really feeling so yeah, it has this way about it that is just like it kind of gives you kind of tough love in a way like
Mm.
the interpretations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that. I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
And I think
it's
it's quite appropriate with our podcast as well. Sacred
yeah,
Rebels Oracle and Tower Rebel podcast. I think it
absolutely.
goes hand in hand.
I
So
think
we
we
might
should
need
get
to
back
get
on
that
that.
soon. Yeah, and maybe swap readings and see how it works as well.
That would be
Yeah.
interesting for sure. And
So that brings us to our last topic for today, which I was very keen on hearing your perspective on, because I know it's been a huge debate in general within the tarot community, and with me personally, I've had a lot of thoughts about this. Dark decks versus light decks. What do you lean more towards? Why would you choose one over the other? Where is the value in one and the other? What do you think? Thoughts, opinions, perspectives.
Uh,
Spill the tea.
how long do we got? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
5 minutes.
I'm kidding.
No, joking.
All right. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. One particular deck that I was never interested in owning, I just didn't connect with it. I just didn't feel a need to invest in, honestly, with the Toph deck. And and I know a lot of people revere the Toph deck because it's one of the original decks out there. Like I said, from the very beginning, from my experience, those were the two decks that were just that you could obtain at that point.
Yeah.
Either the Rider Waite or the Toph. And for some reason, I kind of felt like it was like Jedi versus Sith because I'm honestly not a big fan of Aleister Crowley. I'm gonna say it. I'm not. I have my opinions about him, and like I said, that'll be a whole other episode.
Yes.
I guess so. A lot of people revere him. A lot of people like his work. They studied it, whatever, and that's why they wanted to obtain the Toph deck. Me personally, I guess because of my own opinions about him and his work, and I'm not impressed by the Toph deck. I don't feel a real connection to it. So that's why those were one of the decks that I was just like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I get you.
And it's not really, for me, it's not a matter of light versus dark because I feel like, nature is both light and dark.
Well, then maybe more rephrasing to the aspect of light versus dark in the style of artwork. So we can't, that's very true. I think you brought up a really good point. I don't think we can look at decks in the aspect of them being dark or light as far as their energies. I feel like it more so goes to the aspect of the artwork. So what artwork maybe more so speaks to, like, is it darker? Is it somewhere in the middle that combines both? Or is it more on the light side? Because a lot of like affirmations, oracle cards, majority of the oracle cards, at least in my experience, are more kind of on the lighter side of things.
Yeah,
So as
that's
far as
true.
artwork, it's more so like inspirational, I would say, or like this is
Yes.
what you need to do, like going light and so on and so forth. Not
That's
all of them.
a Hay House deck. A Hay House
Yeah,
deck is an inspirational deck, and
pretty much. Yeah,
that's exactly their theme with
that's
their
why I
deck.
only have Blue Angel decks, Blue Angel Oracle decks, because they're a good mix actually. They're a really good mix of
I have a
positive
lot of
and
Blue Angels
kind
as
of bad.
well.
It's really cool.
I literally have like a whole shelf of Blue Angel decks. I really enjoy them. They're great.
Me too at this point.
Yeah, and a deck that I find kind of dark, believe it or not. And for me, I use the darker decks that I have for karmic reasons. Like if there's a situation that I feel is kind of karmic for me, I will pull out a darker deck because I want to understand the basis of the karma here and why this situation came about. One particular deck that I use is the Fairy Tale Oracle. I use that, and that is, I forgot her name. See, I'm bad with, I'm usually on point. I don't know what's going on here, but
it's the Virgo moon. We be rocking. Everybody else be lost.
I think that's what it is. I'm way too grounded right now, so that's what's happening here. But the Fairy Tale Oracle is one of the darker decks that I use. And because it's Fairy Tales
Lucy Cavendish, and this is Jasmine Beckett Griffith is the artist.
Jasmine Beckett Griffith. Her cute little kind of figures.
Oh, and her artwork. Her artwork is amazing. I love it.
It's really cutesy, but at the same time, it's kind of dark as well.
Oh yeah, very dark.
And the fairy tales, a lot of them are pretty scary. and like the themes of it. So that's for me, that's one of the darker decks that I have. I've never kind of really got darker decks, and I've been wanting to. I know there's the Afro Brazilian deck that I wanted to get that is very voodoo based,
Mm-hmm.
Santa based. So I wanted to invest in that one as well. The Taro of the Orishas, that's another one. I'm very curious about the Fallen Angel deck as well. I actually knew someone that got it, and she was just like completely terrified, and she sold it like within 2 days.
No way.
I
It
honestly, to sum it
is
up, yeah.
it is a serious deck.
Yeah.
You finish your part and then I'm gonna tell you about that deck.
To sum up my opinion of the light versus darker decks, I really say it's a matter of what you're comfortable with. Okay? And me, I'm about the neutrality, I'm about the balance, as above so below. So for me, it's really of what calls to me. If
Yeah.
it calls to me to get a certain deck, whether it's light or dark, I'm getting it. Period. That's it.
Yeah, that's good. Solid.
Yeah, that's
Solid.
where I'm at. No, if it's calling to me, I'm getting it. And there's one particular dark deck that I've been dying to get, and it's kind of hard to find. It's an older deck. It came out in the early 90s, I believe. The Bohemian Gothic Tarot.
Ooh.
So
Oh,
that's like
it's still
that's like the holy grail.
wait. Isn't that produced by Baba Studios? Bohemian Gothic?
I believe so. I know that I can't find an original, and they released a new version of it recently, because I had a few of my friends tell me, "Oh, well, you can get it now, blah blah blah. It's not that
Oh yeah, they
expensive."
have
But
it.
I want the
Oh,
first printing of it. The first printing came out in the 90s, and it's like $300. So,
yeah, it's a lot. Um,
yeah.
let's see. Baba Studios is one that produces that one, yeah. Let me see.
Yeah.
Let me see if they have they have like okay. Let's see what the newer one costs. Tarot. Okay, they have out of print decks. Damn. They have the Bohemian Gothic out of print. Okay, let me see. Tarot books, out of print decks. Bohemian Gothic Tarot. So print.
The first
Okay,
edition
pretty
is
much
like,
all sold out. All sold out. This is
yeah,
the third edition, and okay. It's
yeah.
interesting because it's like very like romantic. It seems very alluring, I would say, by the style of artwork to me, at least.
Yes.
Mm,
I'm
it's
like
very
obsessed
interesting.
with that deck, and the artwork is slightly different in the first edition versus the third now. I think
Okay.
the third edition came out 2007, if I'm not mistaken, the newer one. So
Hmm.
I'm tempted to just maybe get the third edition and just get a feel for it, and then at some point, if I can find the first edition, and I'll get it,
Wow.
But yeah,
It's powerful imagery.
yes,
It's powerful imagery. Like I was looking at the Three of Swords just now, and it's like, whoa. Because it sort of catches you off guard, if that makes sense. Like it's not necessarily like some cards you just have three swords through a heart, and it's like right there you can see it right away. This one is like a lady, a dove, and then another dove that's been stabbed, and it's like
hmm,
bleeding. Sorry for graphic information. So you kind of have to look for it, and that catches you off guard. So it's more, let's say, surprisingly dark. I would say interesting. Very,
right.
very beautiful looking deck, though.
It
I
is.
was looking at that one as well. So maybe someday. You never
I think
know.
I might just I might just settle for the third edition, just because it's a deck I really, really wanted for a long time.
Yeah.
But at some point, if I could find the first edition, that would be awesome. And I have a friend that she collects all kinds of decks. I mean, she must have over 100 decks, and
Damn.
she has some that she's paid a couple of $100s for. So like really rare ones. And I told her if she comes across Bohemian Gothic Tarot, let me know.
Yeah.
You know, where I
Yeah.
could get it. I think she says she has it, but she has the third edition, I
The
believe.
new version. Yeah.
Yeah. So. But yeah, so I got one little question before you
Yes.
go. Before we end this, what was your most challenging deck?
Most challenging deck. I really have to think about that one. I guess a deck that sort of, I have two decks that I would call challenging. Okay, so first would be the Arcane Tarot, which I got and I couldn't understand for the life of me. I was going through the cards and trying to understand it. And that was also if I'm not mistaken, I got that second hand as well. But I was asked to do a reading, and I actually brought that deck to kind of a show to the person. And were like, "Can you do a reading for me?" I was like, "I don't really know if it will work. We can try, but I can't promise anything." And I lay out the cards, and it was absolutely fantastic. Everything was right on the point, word after word, card after card. So I was like, "Okay, so there is a different system to that one. It's really like in pieces." I sort of like to call that deck my psychology, or my psyche deck, because it really is like when you look at a fragmented psyche, it's sort of like that, and it gives you all those different aspects, and you can sort of make an image together and piece it all together. So that one, the one that I have spent the longest time trying to understand and work with, has been the Tarot of Vampires, because it is based off of the Rider-Waite-Smith, but you also have the Thoth tarot connotations as well. So you have the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life. You also have all of the angels connected with that, the Kabbalah angels. So there is a lot. Elemental connections, planetary connections. So there's a whole bunch of like, when people say the Phantasmagoria, the book that accompanies it, is the Holy Grail of Tarot, it really is. Like, I know Benabel One wrote an amazing book that's like yay thick, but Tarot Vampires Phantasmagoria is like, it's filled with information. So that's the deck that I've been trying to learn for the longest. And if we look at it as challenging that ways, yeah, that's been kind of the one that I've spent the longest time. But as far as connecting to image wise, I would say probably the Arcane Tarot in the past.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so
What about you?
those are both decks I have on my wish list, and they, just looking at the artwork, it seems that I would have to spend some time with them for sure. For me, it was actually 3 decks. The first one that was a challenge for me was what I call an expert deck, and those are the ones that don't have the names of the cards, especially the major arcana. They're just numbered, basically. They got numbers and
Yeah.
symbols. That was the first time I came across that. I never seen a deck like that before. And it was a friend of mine that lives in Scotland. So a lot of her decks were European decks, and there's different versions, guys. There's American versions, and then there's European versions. So her decks that she gave me were all European versions, so totally different. A lot of them they have certain borders, or they're borderless. It's different. So when I got this deck, and it was the Enchantress Tarot by Lascarabo, I was like, wait a minute, what card is this? Like, I didn't know what card it was because it didn't say, and I would have to know by the Roman numeral. Like, if it was a major card, a major arcana, I was like, oh, this is the world. Oh, this is the sun, and the pictures are totally different. So you really wouldn't know, like, the sun if you look at it, because it doesn't really show a sun. So
Yeah.
this is what it looks like. Yeah, so it was really at first kind of intimidating. I'm like, what the heck? I don't know how to read this card. I was freaking out, but like I kind of felt like it was a challenge.
Yeah.
So I kept working with it because I wanted to master it. I wanted to learn it, and I did. And it became one of my favorite decks that I kind of use for readings now. This is my go-to deck. And it was the most challenging for me, the one that
Yeah.
I struggled with for so long. Now it's
Yeah.
the one that I
It
use,
usually is that way.
right? And now it's the one that I use like every day. Another another deck that I found kind of complicated was the vice versa tarot,
Uh,
because it's
Interesting.
two-sided. It's not one interpretation, but two. So yeah, so it's not like you're learning 78 interpretations, you're doubling that.
Hmm.
Um, I love the artwork though, and like you said about the Arkan Tarot, well, the Thoth, the vampire, that it had Thoth, and this one is the same thing. It has Rider Waite, it has Thoth, because there's a lot of the Kabbalah in there. There's a lot of the Egyptian imagery from the Thoth deck. So it's a lot of stuff boiled into one. So it's a lot to take on, and
Yeah.
it's again double-sided, two different pictures. So yeah, I love it and I use it, but it is somewhat of a challenge at times. And also very powerful imagery, especially I think the moon card in that deck is just nuts. It's like crazy. It's very powerful because it at
I
one
saw
point
that
it,
one.
yeah, it kind of it's one side of it is the original kind of imagery with the moon and the wolves and all of that, and then on the other side it's the goddess Diana, the moon goddess. So, and the way
Okay.
she looks in that picture, it's like she's staring into your soul. Like, So
Damn.
yeah, so like every time I get that card, I get like, whoa, you can feel the power, the imagery from it, like emanating. So yeah, that's another one. And honestly, you're probably gonna be shocked about this one, but the Chicoli deck I struggle with.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, I thought I would struggle with that one as well when I got it. But when I started reading with it, it's like it just flows.
Yeah, I struggle with the Chicoli deck. I do. I don't use it often because of that. Like sometimes I just get lost in the sauce with certain cards. I'm like, this is five of swords, but there's birds. Like I don't get it. Like
Yeah,
yeah, it kind of
yeah,
throws you off, and it's got that sense of madness to it. And I think because I'm fixed and I'm more cerebral, it's a little too out of pocket for me, so I struggle, you know?
yeah. I find it to be a very much more intuitive tarot
Mhm.
deck than it would be a traditional meaning because I think none of the cards in the deck were actually or the images created were for the tarot deck. They were just picked out from the artwork that already existed prior to this and sort of had
Thrown in there.
similarities to what the tarot card meant. So it's not like with the intention for a tarot deck. So I feel like it's challenging. I agree with that. But it's also very interesting because you do get sort of a different perspective and
And I do
kind of a
think it has a
broader.
sort of a darker edge to it too.
Oh yeah, oh yes. Like the amount of knives it's in its imagery is mind blowing, and
Yeah.
vegetables getting cut that like has been like personalized is definitely dark. It has a very very sinister dark note, but I love it.
Yeah.
It's oh.
Yeah, it has like a sinister sort of madness to it.
Mhm.
And I guess I struggle with tapping in to it at times. I love the artwork. It's beautiful. Like,
It is.
but my I was doing swaps with my group. I had a tarot meetup group, and we
Yeah,
used to meet up every Sunday, and I brought it one day, and my friend also has it, so she connects with it much better than I do. Like I was just like,
really.
yeah. So she's like, I'm pretty comfortable with the Chicoli. I'm like, I don't know, I struggle with it. I love the imagery. It's a gorgeous deck. It's just I don't know. Um, There's another deck that's kind of that way too, which is
Really? Which one?
the Salvador Dali deck.
I've heard of that one. I don't have that one though.
Yeah, the artwork has really no similarities to the original interpretation. Some do, but not all. I love Salvador Dali. He's my favorite artist.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, but I would imagine I will probably have maybe the same issue with the Dali deck.
Mm.
So,
Okay. Well, his art is very specific.
mhm.
So, that would be an
It's also
interesting
very
experience.
dreamy and like it doesn't make any sense. It's also
Yeah.
very kind of that, like, Alice in Wonderland, that nothing is what it seems kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it probably for me would have the same feel if I get my hands on it.
Yeah.
It's also kind of hard to get. It's pretty expensive now. I know I do swaps with a good friend of mine. She has it and I loved it. I said I want to get it. But yeah, I think those are the three that I kind of like found challenging. And there
Mm.
probably will be many more in the future because I am gonna get way more decks at some point. So
Oh yeah. Demary L awaits me, and I know already that that's going to be a freaking challenge. It's a lot. It's a lot.
I
But
feel like the Nightmare Before Christmas deck, I just intuitively feel it's just gonna be a lot of fun
oh
to
yeah,
see
I sort of
interpretation.
feel like it's going to be like Halloween Tarot, very
Yes.
just joyful, happy, cheerful, that's I feel
A
like
very
good for our
festive.
inner children. I feel like that's really good, just to kind of have that playfulness.
That's how I feel too. Yeah.
Mm. It's gonna be fun. I can't wait for it to come. Oh my god, yes.
Me neither. I'm super
So
excited, like
me
OMG.
too. Me too. Oh my god. Sooner rather than later, hopefully.
So for everybody that's listening, what are your favorite decks? Let us
Oh
know.
yes. Let us know
Drop
in the
some
comments.
comments. Yeah.
Yeah.
Drop some comments. Let us know what your favorite decks are, or if you have any
Challenging
questions
decks.
about decks, or want to know like our opinions on certain decks. Feel free to drop us an email.
Or if
And
you have any experiences or thoughts on the decks that we mentioned in this episode, something that we haven't covered, feel free to let us know down below as well and get some conversation going on. That'd be lovely as well.
yeah, we love to hear from you guys. We love and we welcome feedback. So yeah.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, with that, I think we are about to conclude the episode for today. It's been a lovely hour and something. We did cover a lot. So, to anybody that was tuning in today, thank you for listening. I hope that everybody has a wonderful week ahead. We're definitely looking forward, actually, not weekend, pardon me. We're looking to check in with you again next Friday. So, catch us on here next Friday as well.
Yep.
It was fun. Till next time, I guess.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
Bye.